The Fables of Aesop, the Two Frogs. One hot summer, the lake in which two frogs lived was completely dried up, and they were obliged to set off in search of water elsewhere. Coming to a deep and deliciously cool well, one of the frogs proposed that they should jump in at once. "Wait a bit," cried the other. "If that should dry up, how could we get out again?" Jupiter and the Camel. The camel, once upon a time, complained to Jupiter that he was not as well served as he ought to be in the means of defense and offense. "The bull," said he, "has horns, the boar, tusks, and the lion and tiger, formidable claws and fangs that make them feared and respected on all sides. I, on the other hand, have to put up with the abuse of all who choose to insult me." Jupiter angrily told him that if he would take the trouble to think, he would see that he was endowed with qualities shared by no other beast, but that, as a punishment for his unreasonable importunity, henceforward his ears should be shortened. The lion hunting with other beasts. A lion, a heifer, a goat, and a sheep once agreed to share whatever each might catch in hunting. A fine fat stag fell into a snare set by the goat, who thereupon called the rest together. The lion divided the stag into 4 parts, taking the best piece for himself. He said, "This is mine, of course, as I am the lion." Taking another portion, he added, "This too is mine by right." The right, if you must know of the strongest. Further putting aside the 3rd piece, "That's for the most valiant," said he. "And as for the remaining part, touch it if you dare." The stag looking into the pool. A stag drinking at a clear pool admired the handsome look of his spreading antlers, but was much displeased at the slim and ungainly appearance of his legs. "What a glorious pair of branching horns," said he. "How gracefully they hang over my forehead. What an agreeable air they give my face. But as for my spindle shanks of legs, I am heartily ashamed of them." The words were scarcely out of his mouth when he saw some huntsmen and a pack of hounds making towards him. His despised legs soon placed him at a distance from his followers, but on entering the forest, his horns got entangled at every turn, so that the dogs soon reached him and made an end of him. "Mistaken fool that I was," he exclaimed. "Had it not been for these wretched horns, my legs would have saved my life." The Cock and the Jewel. A brisk young cock, scratching for something with which to entertain his favorite hens, happened to turn up a jewel. Feeling quite sure that it was something precious, but not knowing well what to do with it, he addressed it with an air of affected wisdom as follows: "You are a very fine thing, no doubt, but you are not at all to my taste. For my part, I would rather have 1 grain of dear, delicious barley than all the jewels in the world." The Wolf and the Lamb. A hungry wolf one day saw a lamb drinking at a stream, and wished to frame some plausible excuse for making him his prey. "What do you mean by muddling the water I am going to drink?" fiercely said he to the lamb. "Pray forgive me," meekly answered the lamb. "I should be sorry in any way to displease you, but as the stream runs from you towards me, you will see that such cannot be the case." "That's all very well," said the wolf, "but you know you spoke ill of me behind my back a year ago." "Nay, believe me," replied the lamb, "I was not then born." "It must have been your brother then," growled the wolf. "It could not have been, for I never had any," answered the lamb. "I know it was one of your lot," rejoined the wolf, "so make no more such idle excuses." He then seized the poor lamb, carried him off to the woods, and ate him. The Peacock's Complaint. The peacock complained to Juno that while everyone laughed at his voice, an insignificant creature, like the nightingale, had a note that delighted everybody. Juno, angry at the unreasonableness of her favorite bird, scolded him in the following terms. "Envious bird that you are, I am sure you have no cause to complain. On your neck shine all the colors of the rainbow, and your extended tail shows like a mass of gems. No living being has every good thing to its own share. The falcon is endowed with swiftness, the eagle, strength, the parrot, speech, the raven, the gift of augury, and the nightingale, with a melodious note. While you have both size and beauty, cease then to complain, or the gifts you have shall be taken away." The Cat and the Mice. A certain house was much infested by mice. The owner brought home a cat, a famous mouser, who soon made such havoc among the little folk that those who remained resolved they would never leave the upper shelves. The cat grew hungry and thin in consequence, and driven to her wits' end, hung by her hind legs to a peg in the wall, and pretended to be dead. An old mouse came to the edge of the shelf, and, seeing through the deception, cried out, Ah, Mrs. Pussy, we should not come near you, even if your skin were stuffed with straw." The Dog and His Shadow. A dog, bearing in his mouth a piece of meat that he had stolen, was crossing a smooth stream by means of a plank. Looking in, he saw what he took to be another dog carrying another piece of meat. Snapping greedily to get this as well, he let go of the meat that he had and lost it in the stream. The Ant and the Fly. An ant and a fly one day disputed as to their respective merits. "Vile creeping insect," said the fly to the ant, "can you for a moment compare yourself with me? I soar on the wing like a bird. I enter the palaces of kings, and alight on the heads of princes, nay, of emperors, and only quit them to adorn the yet more attractive brow of beauty. Besides, I visit the altars of the gods. Not a sacrifice is offered, but is first tasted by me. Every feast, too, is open to me. I eat and drink of the best, instead of living for days on 2 or 3 grains of corn as you do." "All that's very fine," replied the ant, "but listen to me. You boast of your feasting, but you know that your diet is not always so choice, and you are sometimes forced to eat what nothing should induce me to touch. As for alighting on the heads of kings and emperors, you know very well that whether you pitch on the head of an emperor or of an ass, and it is as often on the one as the other, you are shaken off from both with impatience, and then the altars of the gods, indeed. There and everywhere else you are looked upon as nothing but a nuisance. In the winter, too, while I feed at my ease on the fruit of my toil, what more common than to see your friends dying with cold, hunger, and fatigue? I lose my time now in talking to you. Chattering will fill neither my bin nor my cupboard." The Stag in the Ox Stall. A stag, hard pressed by the hounds, ran for shelter into an ox stall, the door of which was open. One of the oxen turned around and asked him why he came to such a place as that, where he would be sure to be taken. The stag replied that he should do well enough if the oxen would not tell of him, and covering himself in a heap of straw, waited for the night. Several servants and even the farm bailiff himself came and looked around, but saw nothing of the stag, who, as each went away, was ready to jump out of his skin for joy, and warmly thanked the oxen for their silence. The ox who had spoken first to him warned him not to be too sure of his escape, and said that glad as they would all be for him to get away, there was a certain person still to come whose eyes were a deal sharper than the eyes of anyone who had been there yet. This was the master himself, who, having been dining with a neighbor, looked in on his way home to see that all was right. At a glance he saw the tips of the horns coming through the straw, whereupon he raised a hue and cry, called all his people together, and made a prize of the stag.